Hi there, I'm Alexa. I am a hip dysplasia warrior. I had my left periacetabular osteotomy a few months ago. I also happen to be a running coach and a sports massage therapist, so thought I would share some tips with you today about a really nice way to stretch. Often when we have hip dysplasia, our muscles are trying really hard to protect and look after our hip joints, which is really brilliant of them. The slight downside is literally the only thing a muscle can do that is in its options in order to help us is to get tight, to protect that particular area. And sometimes that has knock-on effects that we don't necessarily want. So at any stage of your hip dysplasia journey, you might be struggling with tight muscles, and there's a couple of little ways that you can just get these stretches to be gentle but a little bit more effective, using the positioning of our body, engagement of other muscles, and also some nice breathing techniques. So I'm going to talk you through a couple of different ways we can do this. I'm going to pick a couple of fairly popular muscles that get a little bit tight for hip dysplasia patients. So the first one I'm going to start with is our adductors. These are the inside thigh muscles. It gets quoted quite a lot, so I might just do a little bit of an anatomy explanation first. So adductor, which is adductor, is the muscle that brings your leg in across the centre line. So the way I remember it is it's adding your leg towards your body, bringing the leg across the centre. Abduction, abduction, is the opposite movement, so it's taking your leg outside, away from your body. So hopefully adduction, adding, bringing the leg back towards the body again, will help you to remember that one. So these are normally quite tight. They're tight pretty much every day for me at the moment. So a really nice gentle way of stretching these out is to take a little bit of a big step sideways and then just shift your weight slowly over to one side. So we're holding this for a few seconds. From a sporting point of view, there's been quite a bit of research done about the best amount of time to stretch for, about 10 or 15 seconds. In my experience, when you've got a bit of a condition that's causing those muscles to be protective and to be tighter to be protective, it's worth holding it a little longer. And here's the little tip to make this stretch more effective. Once you've been in that stretch for a little while, 10, 15 seconds or more, just take a nice breath in. And as you breathe out, just move slightly further into that stretch. So you might have noticed as I breathed out, I just shifted my weight slightly further into that stretch. There's a lovely mechanism when we take a nice long relaxing out breath that our muscles will be able to stretch and relax a little bit more. So in breath to prepare. Out breath, and that muscle will give you a little more stretch. So that's one little tip of how we can get a little bit more out of our stretching. The other one is how we use the opposite muscle to help stretch a particular muscle. So perhaps the easiest ways to explain this is our biceps, which do this, and our triceps on the back of our arm, which do that. So they work entirely opposite ways to each other. They're a pair, and they do the opposite task. So the bicep will bend the elbow and the tricep will straighten the elbow. Now there's a cunning little mechanism with muscles that work in pairs like that, where when one is working, the other one switches off, because otherwise it would get into a bit of a tug of war. So when the bicep is doing some work, this tricep will naturally switch off. The tricep is working, the bicep will naturally switch off. So we can use that a little bit to our advantage when we're stretching. So one of my favourite hamstring stretches is just to take a short step forward. This front leg is really nice and straight, nice and tall in the torso, and we just lean forward with a nice long back over that front leg. So my hamstrings are quite tight. I don't go any further than this at the moment. We can hold here again for 10 or 15 seconds to start with. And if you think about the hamstring, the muscle down the back of the thigh, its opposite is the muscle right at the front of the thigh. So once you've just hung out here for a little bit in this stretch, actually think about this muscle on the front of the thigh, just clenching it a little bit, switching it on so you can feel it tighten up underneath you. And as you switch that muscle at the front of the thigh, you might find, you can see me tipping forward a little bit more here, but the muscle at the back, the hamstring, allows you a little bit more of a stretch. Switch off that muscle, just relax the front of the thigh again. You might want to mix it up with a little bit of that breathing technique as well. So in breath. See if we can get a little more out of that hamstring. Hold it, letting it have time to relax. Yeah? And then try that one more time again. So just switching on the quad muscles, quadriceps, down the front of this thigh, giving them a bit of a squeeze so that muscle gets nice and solid. And that will just allow my hamstring to give a little bit more. And see how much further over I am than when I started off here. The time and the patience with these muscles is key. And then when you come out of the stretch, really nice and gently. A couple of other tips with stretching I often see, and this is more people doing sport who've got a history of doing sport, of kind of bouncing the stretchers. So they're kind of doing this, bouncing up and down. Science has now shown that that's not a great strategy. Your muscles have like a protective mechanism in them. So if they bounce or they overextend, they'll actually contract. You'll know that if you sort of nearly go over on your ankle, all of your muscles go, whoop, hang on, let's just catch that movement. We don't like that overstretching. So try not to bounce a stretch. Particularly for tight muscles that have been tight for an extended period of time, go into that stretch really gently. Really sort of nice and smooth and gentle on the body. Don't suddenly drop yourself into a stretch as far as you can go, because again that will encourage the muscle to be a bit protective. And that's why it's tight in the first place. It's trying its best to look after you. I hope that's really helpful. You can try those on all sorts of different areas of the body. So if you've been given any stretches by your physio, your physical therapist, these are useful techniques just to get the best out of the stretches that you've been given. Hope that's helpful. Best of luck with your journey.